So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rabbi Audrey Karatkin from Temple Beth Israel, Andy and Nancy's congregation. And I'd like to welcome everyone here. We have so many people joining us this afternoon. I'm saying afternoon in the States. It's late, I guess, Erev Tov in Israel, where so many family members are joining us as well. We have people from all over the world. Please just remember to stay muted unless you're speaking. We have a lot of people who are going to share with us this afternoon. We're going to ask anyone who would like to share some memories of Adele to let our temple president, Mike Holzer, who is doing the technical aspects this afternoon. Mike will keep an eye on in the chat box. If you will send a chat in and let us know that you would like to speak. And also, if you are a family member, would like to share some memories, please identify yourself to Mike as a family member in the chat box. And we will make sure that all of the family members are able to speak first. Esainai el hecharim me'ayin yavo Ezri. Esainai el hecharim me'ayin yavo Ezri. Ezri. Name Adonai, Oseh, Shamayim v'aretz, Ezri. Name Adonai, Oseh, Shamayim v'aretz. I lift my eyes to the mountains, from where will come my help? My help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. See, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your guardian, your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. Adonai will guard your going out and your coming in, for this time forth and forever. With these words of comfort from the psalmist, we honor the fullness and beauty of the life of Adele Gurman Konecky, whose family we embrace as they gather here today to remember her. Actually, the woman that we honor is Adele Molly Levin Gurman Konecky, also known as Adina. And I include all of her names here because every single one of them reflects a part of her life, a part of who she was and the people who shaped her and whom she in turn shaped. Andy and Robert and Denny will help us throughout the service understand and appreciate each and every one of those names and how they reflect the 94 years of Adele's life. We hope the family, others of whom also will speak, will take comfort in these memories and in the embrace of all your friends who were with you today. Some of those friends are some of the rabbis that Adele collected along the way. More about that later. Rabbi Yaron Kapitolnik was Adele's rabbi at Temple Judea in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. He will be joining us this evening from Israel, where he's visiting his children. Rabbi Jim Perman will also be joining us. He was Adele's rabbi in New York for many years, and they maintained a very long time friendship. And he'll be joining us from his home in Naples, Florida. Rabbi Greg Weitzman of Rodef Shalom in New York City, Robert's family rabbi, who officiated at the graveside service last week for Adele, will be joining us as well. And a friend of Denny's, Rabbi Lisa Grant from New York, will also be joining us. And we want to welcome them. I always want to welcome all of my colleagues, and especially in Adele's case, because she became friends with so many of us. Once again, during the service, we'll have family members speak. Later on in the service, a chance for many of the rest of you to speak. Just let Mike Holzer know in the chat box that you would like to speak later on. Ahavat Olam. We are loved by an unending love. We are embraced by arms that find us, even when we are hidden from ourselves. We are touched by fingers that soothe us, even when we are too proud for soothing. We are counseled by voices that guide us, even when we are too embittered to hear. We are loved by an unending love. We are supported by hands that uplift us, even in the midst of a fall. We are urged on by eyes that meet us, even when we are too weak for meeting. We are loved by an unending love. I'm going to ask Adele's sons, Andy and Robert, to take some time now to share some of those memories of the unending love of their mom, Adele.
Thank you all for coming. Coming to help us celebrate the life of an extraordinary woman. I'll try to get through this. Those of you who know me know that I tear up describing the endings of operas like La Boheme or Aida. Actually, so did Mom. And when the Met broadcast had La Boheme on the schedule, I would call her after the second act to ask her if she was crying. I knew that she would be. As I've been reaching out to tell people about Mom's passing and about this service, I've been amazed not only by how much she was loved, but at how much she made her whole family part of the conversation. One of the residents at the Carlisle where she lived said to me on the phone the other day, "Andrew, I probably know more about you than you do." Mom was a collector of people and a nurturer of relationships. She met people, and if she liked them, they became close friends for life. She called, she wrote, she became part of their lives as they became part of hers. My sister Denny will tell you Mom's story in a bit of a different way later, and my brother Robert will have some thoughts as well. But there are a few things I would like to share with you. I think that my daughter Karen pegged her Nana perfectly. She saw the world not as it was, but as she thought it should be. And then she acted as if what she was seeing or what she thought she should be seeing was true. At times this was endearing, at times it was very aggravating or embarrassing, but it was never malicious. I'll give you an example. We used to have great brunches on the patio in Mount Vernon. I remember a time when we couldn't find the bagel bowl. We had lots of baskets, bowls, platters, but she had a particular bowl in her mind's eye. And we weren't going to proceed until we found that perfect bowl. I learned a lot from Mom. I have her love of opera and classical music, her commitment to social justice, charity, and Judaism. I've had the pleasure of studying Torah and other Jewish subjects with her at Temple Judea when I was visiting Florida, which was the highlight of our visits, and recently online as she joined our Temple Beth Israel study groups. Mom was an incredibly strong woman. At age 36, she was on top of the world. She had 3 kids, a brilliant, successful husband, prominence in the Jewish philanthropic community, and a beautiful house in the suburbs. Then my father died suddenly, and her world was truly turned upside down. She went to work and concurrently to school. She made sure her kids still had opportunities to grow and expand. Denny will tell you a little more about that. One final thought. Mom was very good at prolonging celebrations. She used the entire month of November to celebrate her birthday, sometimes overlapping into October or December if necessary. She had her annual birthday trip to the opera with one friend, an annual birthday luncheon with another, et cetera, et cetera. It's therefore entirely fitting the way this commemoration of her passing is playing out. She died 2 weeks ago, wasn't buried until a week later, and a week after that is this memorial. And we still haven't had a big meal of condolence. So next year sometime, we will plan to have a big party in conjunction with the unveiling of her tombstone. I hope that you can all make it to that one. Baruch Dayan Hayamet. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's up to me. So thank you all for joining us today. I made some comments at the funeral last week, and I've just kind of expanded them, made them a little bit more personal for now. Adele Gurman Konecky was intensely devoted to family and friends and committed to Judaism and Israel. Every human interaction, whether with a close or distant relative, a lifelong friend, a familiar waiter, or even a stranger, was about you and what you were doing, thinking, interested in. As you will hear from Danny in more detail, each decade of her life was filled with new people, and she simply added more through each chapter, while always maintaining the older ones and weaving them into her new activities with newer friends. As Andy just observed, my mother collected people. Her love of Judaism was evident in everything she did, and because of that, she was always close with the clergy. Rabbi Molino from Danbury, who married my mother twice, and married each Andy, Denny, and Susan and me. Rabbis Jick and Perman, who I believe is with us today from the Free Synagogue in Mount Vernon. And Rabbis Levine and Yaron from Temple Judea in Palm Beach, where all three of her kids and perhaps a couple of her grandkids accompanied her to Shabbat Torah study. The Free Synagogue was really her second home, where she was involved in so many activities, as were us as the kids, and usually with her wonderful lifelong friends in the Jewish Sisters. Her legacy to me in this regard, in addition to simply a strong sense of Jewishness, can be seen in many ways. Due to both her love of music and the beauty of sung prayers, I do as she did and always sit on the cantor side of the sanctuary. Sorry, Rabbis Levine and Weitzman. And I look out the synagogue windows to the glow of the diminishing light during the Yom Kippur Nila service. And because there was so much of her life and loves and Jewish activities that I absorbed, they came up so frequently that my mother was effectively an honorary member of Rodef's Wise Aging class, which I have enjoyed and related continually to my mother for the past 5 years. My mother was a beautiful, intelligent, loving, and caring, funny, warm, charitable, compassionate, and empathic woman. She taught me strength, particularly in adversity, and perseverance, particularly to achieve things you passionately believe in. She taught me humility, humor, curiosity, taught me to appreciate things big and small, to appreciate people of all kinds and from all walks of life, and to always be a good person. At her funeral last week, we honored and paid respects to her, acknowledging an incredibly full and rich life, 94 years worth, to be accurate and honest. For me, up until her death, I was able to say my mother is all of these things. I cannot yet fathom that from now on, I can only say my mother was. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robert. We are, I'm going to ask Mike Holzer at this time to bring up Psalm 23 on our screen so that we can share that together, the Hebrew and the English. And just also a reminder for those of you who would like to speak, to let Mike know in the chat box that you would like to say something later on in the service. And please identify yourself if you're a family member so that we can call on you first as well. Mizmor LaDavid. Adonai ro'i lo echsar. Binot desha yarbitzeni. Al mei menuchot yanachaleni. Nafshi yushovev yancheni v'magle tzedek l'ma'an shemo. Gam ki elek begeitz al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha hema yanachamuni. Ta'arok lefonai shulchan neged sorarai. Dishanta vashemen kosi ravaya. Ach tov v'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai. V'shavti b'veit Adonai la'orech yamin. A song of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for the sake of his name. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Thank you, Mike. I think it's really important for as many people as possible in a family to hear their thoughts and feelings reflected in a memorial service such as this. Some have chosen to share memories with me so that I can share them with all of you, and others would like to speak to you personally. So now we have some of Adele's, those younger people who clung to Adele, who were drawn to her, who would like to share their memories from the family. Adele's daughter-in-law, Nancy Gurman, and her daughter, Karen. Adele's son-in-law, Roni Raviv, and his daughter, Shanae Raviv Cohen. Hi, Shani. And we have Robert's daughter, Lily, here. And also their cousin, Jennifer Konecky Wheelock, has joined us, and she's going to speak as well. So I am going to, let's see. Who wants to go first? I'm going to put on a gallery view here so that we can see who's here. Ronnie, would you like to go first, you and Shani?
Okay, unmute myself.
Okay. Okay, you hear me? I don't hear it.
Yes, we can hear you. You're good.
Okay, good. So just a few words. Adele, Nana, what a good person. Adele accepted me as her son-in-law right away. From then on, I always felt her warmth and love. She accepted that her only daughter will leave for Israel, but through all this year, continuously visited and vice versa. Always, she was involved to the smallest detail. Adele wanted to know and experience everything. Her home with Mary in Mount Vernon and in Irvington was a second home to me, as she always wanted me to stay with them during business visits to New York, always making me welcome and loved. Adele's love for our children was so total, playing, asking, suggesting. Adele was definitely a family person. Our daughters always recalled the visits with Nana. With the grandchildren, she divided attention to all but the details one-on-one. Then the great-grandchildren. Adele was very involved with them, and they reciprocated with her. Daniela remembers many visits to Florida, and Daniela, Ariel, and Doron Skyped with her, and her telepresence building their English foundation and socialization. I always will remember her as a happy, smiling, loving, clever person, which always part of my adult life with Danny. Bon voyage, Adele, to wherever you travel.
Thank you so much, Ronnie. Is Shani with you? Is she going to be joining us?
She's there at her home.
Okay. Let's see if we can find Shania, if you would unmute yourself and we will find you.
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful.
Okay. It's been more than 2 weeks since Nana suddenly passed away in her own elegant way. There was so much to say about Nana, and trying to choose the right words is almost impossible. So I chose to write to you, Nana, and not to speak about you. Living so far away brought us to choose a special relationship that held so much in it. I was your Shani and you were my Nana. You were an inherent part of my life, only living 6,500 miles away. Part of my weekly routine and daily decisions. You were on the top of my mind and owned a nice piece of property in my heart. Shortly after I started dating Uri, my husband, I broke up with him, and he will never forget that one of the excuses I had was that I won't have time for him in my busy life because I have this and that and Nana and Papa. I told him that I won't have time to spend with him on my vacations from the army because I wanted to visit you. That a big of a portion of my life you were. Luckily, he didn't accept this excuse. You were such a great Nana, so special and so different. The kind of Nana that never asked that I wear a sweater. You were more likely to ask, why won't you wear something a bit dressier? The kind of Nana that her biggest oy vey was when she found out that she forgot to put her lipstick on. The kind of Nana that held her lover's hand so much as she could, even during their new nap, and explained to me how much romantic attributes are fundamental in life. Nana, you were such a lady, so much glam, holding your body in such an elegant way, always straight and forward in your look and in your words. We had the most special relationship. I was so happy to make you proud and share every exciting moment I had with you. You were always encouraging. I remember that in one of my visits, you told me, tearful right before we left, that I am such a good mother. Hearing it from you made it so special and true. There is so much from you in each and every one of us. I promise I will do my best to be as kind and generous as you were, and make sure to spice life with self-laughter and joy. Thank you for being the mother you were to my mother and uncles, fighting life's challenges to get this family to where it is. Thank you for giving me 31 years besides you. I can't imagine life without you, but I know you will be with me in every step I take. I am lucky to be the granddaughter of Adele, Adina, the strongest woman I have ever known.
Thank you so much, Shani. I'm going to ask Nancy Gurman to join us at this time. I see you. Hello.
There you go. You're on.
I have been the luckiest daughter-in-law in the world to have Adele as my mother-in-law. She made me laugh and she made me cry. When I first met Adele, I was putting myself through college and really was just, didn't have any money, didn't have any, anything at my command. And she was throwing a 50th birthday party for Murray. And Andy wanted me to go. And she said, yes, that was okay. And a week later, we were visiting and she said to me, what are you wearing to this party? And I said, I don't have anything to wear to this party. It was a black tie party at the Cloud Club in Manhattan. And she took me upstairs with her and went into her closet and said, I have a couple of dresses that might work for you. And she lent me a dress to wear to this first party where I was meeting not just the family, but all of their friends. And it was something I never forgot. She just was so generous to me all my life. She also made me laugh and cry. Although she accepted the fact that I had converted to Judaism, she still thought of me as being somebody who was not Jewish. And when her first granddaughter was born, our daughter Karen, a few months later, came to be Easter time. And I reminded my parents, please don't bring Easter baskets or chocolate bunnies to our house because this is a Jewish home and we don't want to do it. And that afternoon, Adele showed up with an Easter basket. And I said, Mom, what are you doing? Why did you bring an Easter basket to this house? And she said, when my kids were growing up, I wanted them to have Easter baskets so much, but I knew I couldn't do it. So of course I forgave her and we enjoyed the chocolate. But she was a woman, a very special person. And I loved her with all my heart. And I'm going to miss her very much.
Karen, would you like to say anything? Karen, is Karen there with you? Would she like to say anything?
I will. I would. I heard a quote once about a woman's optimism, and the way that this person described that optimism was, it was not a Pollyanna-ish type optimism. It was a General Grant optimism, always forward, never surrender. And when I hear that quote, I think of my Nana. I think she was somebody who chose joy every single moment of every single day. And that's a lesson that I take with me. Shani, I mean, like said it so beautifully. I mean, her elegance was just indisputable. I will always remember her that way, and her lipstick and her compact after dinner. And just, I think she gave me my love of art and music and beautiful things, which for those of you who know me was truly, I mean, determined the course of my education in life. And she was somebody who didn't just love beautiful things, but had a real appreciation for the people who made them, for the stories behind them. And so I'm thankful to her for that as well, and so many things, and we'll miss her, right?
Thank you so much, Karen. In talking with the family, Denny mentioned to me that her mom loved to learn more about the stories of women in the Bible and to hear women's voices reflected in our tradition. So in her honor, and for the many ways Adele was a gift to so many people, I want to share a poem by the Bible scholar, Rabbi Dr. Andrea Weiss. Lech Lecha is based on the beginning of the journey of Abraham and Sarah in Genesis chapter 12, and reflects the many ways that we can understand this divine command, Lech Lecha, go forward, in Judaism. Lech Lecha, go forth on a journey. Go by yourself. Standing at a crossroads, you venture from the known to the unknown. Some journeys must be made alone. Go to yourself. Spiral inward and unwrap your past and your potential. Remember that the soul which you have made is unique and holy. Go for yourself. Smell the fragrance which spreads across the land as you roam and wander. Refresh yourself under the tree which grows by a spring at the side of the road. Make your name great and make your life a blessing. I'd like to ask Denny now to join us and share her reflections on the blessings of Adele's life. This is based on a celebration of her life that she wrote for her mom's 90th birthday, and she's done some updating to share even more of those beautiful memories with us. Denny?
Unmute.
Yes.
Okay. Before I start, I wanted to just add to my brother's comments about how mom collected friends, and it's just so heartwarming seeing so many old and new friends. And I just want to mention too, one of her oldest friends, Harriet Remez. I saw her name there. I didn't see you lit up, Harriet, but I know you're there. And a very, very new friend from just the past few months, I see Ruth Gonzalez, who I know was someone from her temple who would call her, and got to know her. And we received a lovely letter from her. I will be writing you back, Ruth. Thank you. Okay, 4 years ago, on my mother's 90th birthday, I took the opportunity to collect and catalog her lifetime accomplishments, and I wrote an essay which I entitled Adele's Life in Tens. The occasion was a lovely luncheon for 20 or so friends, neighbors, nieces, and grandnieces, totally organized and orchestrated by Adele to the last detail, including carpooling all the girls from the Carlisle. As you know, tzedakah was a value very close to her heart, and in lieu of gifts, she asked for contributions to Feed South Florida organization. And the luncheon raised over $2,000 at that occasion, which is just something wonderful, and she was so proud of that. I chose again to celebrate my mom's life instead of a eulogy, and that is why I'm going to reread what I wrote for that party, adding the last few years. So, Act 2, Adele's Life in Tens. Starting with 0, Adele Molly Levin was born in Brooklyn, New York, in 1926 to Sylvia and Sam, sister to Martin. In her second decade, she attended PS 106 and Erasmus Hall High School and spent the summers at Camp Deerhead. In her 20s, Adele was a student at Syracuse University. Though initially a music and concert piano major, she switched to a major in social work. Adele also met her future husband, Stuart Gurman, a handsome Army pilot attending upstate medical school on the GI Bill. A few years later, they would move to Forest Hills, and she became the youth director of the National Council of Jewish Women in New York City, while her husband was a resident at Mount Sinai Hospital and later became the mother of Andrew and Denny. In her 30s, the family moved to Mount Vernon, and her youngest child, Robert, became the latest addition to the family. In her spare time, Adele was active and eventually became president of the Women's League of the Free Synagogue of Westchester, and was active in the formation of the Women's Committee of Brandeis University, raising thousands of dollars to support the new Jewish university and library. She also became a member of Hadassah. Around this time, the original and iconic girl power group, the Jewish Sisters, came into being. What initially was a once-a-month luncheon rotation continued to be a social mecca and support group for the members well into their 80s. By her 40s, she was a widow with 3 children. She got a job as an office manager and also attended Pratt University in Brooklyn, earning a master's degree in library science, and became a librarian at Trapegan Elementary School. She was a pioneer in the burgeoning technological advances in library science as the library became a media center, and introduced many innovations which were all precursors of the computer age, not known at the time. Adele also met and married Murray Konecky, who remained her partner and friend for 49 happy years. In her 50s, Adele continued to work in childhood education while sending her own children out in the world to make their way and saw them find their life partners. Adele and Murray sold the Mount Vernon home, said goodbye to the pool where family and friends spent so many happy times, and with considerably less laundry to do, moved to a smaller but very roomy condominium in Irvington, New York, where they continued to entertain family and friends. Their sukkah parties and clam chowder get-togethers were legendary. Adele's 50s and 60s ushered in the age of grandchildren, where after 6 girls was finally marked with the arrival of 2 boys. Adele retired from her teaching career and began devoting more time to her Hadassah chapter and visiting her children and grandchildren near and far. Murray and Adele continued to entertain a wide social circle and traveled in the US, Canada, Europe, and Israel. In her 70s, Adele and Murray began to winter in Florida and eventually moved permanently to a beautiful ocean view apartment at the Barclay, arriving on the eve of Hurricane Katrina. Quite a welcome. Adele continued to volunteer for the Brandeis Bookshop, was active on the board of the Barclay, and kept up with old acquaintances, as well as making new ones. She also graduated from a 2-year program at the Melton School, a lifelong curriculum for Jewish learning. Adele played tennis well into her 70s and gave her grandchildren a run for their money on the court. I believe her racket still hangs in the closet. This decade also brought on the great-grandchildren brigade with the births of Caitlin and Lindsay in Tucson, Arizona. One of her greatest joys was her association with the JNF in the Charitable Gift Annuity Program. As a donor, she was invited to many functions, and she would always call to give me the blow-by-blow of the menu, venue, and speaker, usually in that order. In her 80s, Adele's physical activities may have slowed down a bit, but she and Murray continued an active social life, attending concerts, opera, and theater. Adele played bridge, mahjong, and swam almost every day. Her move to the Carlisle opened up a new world of activities and friendships, which were an amazing source of support when she lost Murray in 2014. This decade has brought marriages of 2 grandchildren, and Adele attended her granddaughter Shani and Uri's wedding, albeit by Skype, but was able to travel to her granddaughter Karen and Kyle's wedding in Pennsylvania. She also welcomed the birth and later visits of great-grandchild Daniela from Israel. Perhaps the pinnacle of that decade was attending her son Andrew's installation as president of the AMA, a 3-day gala where she didn't miss a meeting, dinner, lunch, or ceremony. Adele remained active in her synagogue and Torah classes and working for charities, especially Feeding South Florida. In the 9th decade, began with a cruise to the Bahamas on a new cruise ship, the Koningsdam, a birthday dinner with her children at the Breakers Flagler Steakhouse, a birthday dinner at the Carlisle, and the said luncheon for the girls. In her 10th decade, Mom somewhat slowed down, but with the assistance of her capable and devoted caregiver, Stephanie, and her sister, Annette, continued to have a full schedule. She welcomed 3 new great-grandchildren, Evelyn in DC, Ariel in Israel, both who visited her a year ago for her birthday, and Doron, now 11 months, who she got to know over Skype. Wow, what a life. And using the jargon of another of my mother's favorite pastimes, which was poker, my brothers, children, grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and spouses really hit the jackpot. I'm going to miss her a lot.
Oh, thank you so much. Wonderful words. Thank you. It's wonderful to hear from all of these stories from this amazing life, and we're going to hear more in a couple of minutes. I did mention that it's important for me to recognize when colleagues are here, so I want to recognize and welcome Rabbi Sue Levi Elwell, who is a very longtime friend of Andy and Nancy Gurman, who has joined us here in remembrance of Adele. So Sue, welcome. We have a couple more members of the family who, younger members of the family who were also enthralled and adored by Adele. And we're going to ask Robert's daughter, Lily, to join us at this time. And then after Lily shares some memories, we're going to also call on their cousin, Jennifer Konecky Wheelock, to join us as well.
Hi, everyone. I just wanted to share one story that I love about Nana. It wasn't something that happened with me, but it's from when she was younger and attended Syracuse. As we all know, she was vivacious, she was confident, and last but not least, was a very strong-willed woman. And I think we all, the granddaughters especially, really emanate that well. So when she was attending Syracuse, there was a policy that women could not wear pants. They had to wear bottoms, I promise, but they had to wear skirts. And Syracuse gets very cold in the winter. And so she took a few of her sorority sisters from AE5 and they went to the president's office and they petitioned to be allowed to wear snow pants in school. And although there was a lot of hesitation, they were able to get the policy changed. So they didn't have to track through the snow in skirts, you know, ruining the nice fabrics, and they could actually stay warm in the winter. I found that story out when I took an aging and society class in college. I had interviewed her to see what I was missing, what I didn't know, and that was really a gem to come out of that. You know, she was really special. She was really big, and I just wanted to share that story with everyone because I think it's a really special one.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. And Jennifer, if you would join us at this time as well. We're going to have to get you to unmute.
Yeah, there we
There
go.
we go.
Yeah. Hello, I'm not very good at these things. Thank you. I just wanted to, I had a couple of little stories and to talk about Aunt Adele as well. I realized, you know, I'd been around them, you know, aunt and uncle, Murray and Adele, obviously all my life. My father was Murray's brother, one of his brothers. And just a couple stories. The first one is I remember, I guess I was staying with Murray and Adele when I was little. I had to be about 8 or 7 or something. And I guess she was sort of stuck with me for the day and didn't know what to do. And I believe it was Mount Vernon because she took me to work. And I spent the day with her in the library with the kids coming in and out. And I remember, I don't remember exactly, but she was telling stories and reading to everybody. And I was just so, you know, very proud. And of course, my aunt is doing this, you know, and all the kids loved her. And, you know, I just wanted everyone to know, I mean, you know, obviously, but you know, I was there, I saw her doing what she loved, and she made a very big impression on me as a young kid, which I, you know, thank her for, and all of you. And then the second one is she did marry into a little bit of a crazy family with 3 other brothers, Murray and the 3 other brothers. And for Passover, she was great. She would always have us over for Passover. And my dad and my uncle Bill, we would all show up. I remember mostly in Irvington this happening, not in Mount Vernon, but of course, Dad and my uncle, they would bring their own bottle of wine. They didn't like Manischewitz so much. And poor Aunt Adele, she would put them at the other end of the table. So, and it never, you know, never fear. Every year, my dad would spill the red wine all over her favorite linens. And she was like saying, what are you guys doing? But she'd always have the seltzer and the salt or something to try to save her tablecloth. And eventually she just had a towel there for Dad because he did it every year. And I just kind of thought this is like a great, I don't know how funny she thought it was, but I always felt it was a great warm family moment, everybody laughing at everybody. And my dad saying, I don't know why I keep doing this all the time, but she was, I just think so much of her and her sense of family and being there and visiting everybody, because she would visit us when our kids, Bob and my kids, were born. We would get a visit, and it was great, you know. And family was important to her, and I love her, and will always think of her. So thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much. Andy mentioned in conversation the other day that he thought his mom conjured up for him the image of the Eshet Chayil, the woman of valor, so beautifully described in Proverbs chapter 31. So I've chosen some excerpts with some reflections of Adele woven in. Eshet Chayil, mi yimtza. a woman of valor who can find. Her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and nothing shall he lack. She renders him good and not evil all the days of her life. Adele Molly Levin Gurman Konecky was blessed with the love of 2 wonderful men, as well as her 3 children, 8 grandchildren, 6 great-grandchildren, their in-laws, and all the nieces and nephews. Her children were the crowning achievement of her life, she said, and they were always a blessing to each other. To them, she passed on her commitment to education, her passionate love of art and music, and her steadfast loyalty to her Jewish faith and to the state of Israel. Kapa Parsa Oni. She opens her hand to the needy and extends her hand to the poor. She is robed in strength and dignity and cheerfully faces whatever may come. Adele's devotion to Tikkun Olam was unwavering, no matter where she lived. She fervently believed in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, no matter who they were. Her dedication to charitable and community organizations within the Jewish community and outside of it was often groundbreaking and always lasting. Piha patcha v'chokhmah. She opens her mouth with wisdom. Her tongue is guided by kindness. She tends to the affairs of her household and eats not the bread of idleness. As you've heard from so many people, Adele collected people her whole life, from her college friend Helene to random strangers she met on trips. She met Ina in the ladies' room while she was on her honeymoon. Of course, we've heard about, and some are here today, her Jewish sisters up in Westchester, to all these younger people who were always attracted to her verb and her wisdom. And of course, every single rabbi of every single congregation she was part of, including ours. And as Andy said, her collection always grew because she kept these people for life. She nurtured these relationships, calling and writing and wanting to know how you were and what you were up to. It was Robert who came up with the phrase friends, family, friends, Torah, and charity to describe his mother's life. All of these she kept close to her heart, and they were her Eitz Chaim, her tree of life, from which her life stemmed, grew, and blossomed from her first day to her last. Kamu vanecha, vayash rucha, her children come forward and bless her, her husband too, and he praises her. Many women have done superbly, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a God-revering woman is much to be praised. Place before her the fruit of her hands. Wherever people gather, her deeds speak her praise. Now, there are additional family members and friends whom she collected over these years who are here today. We want to hear from some of you. We're going to call on her niece, Sharon Goldstein, who is with us. Sharon, if you would unmute and share your memories with us at this time.
Mute. Okay. I'm listening to all these wonderful things being said by everybody. First of all, I want to send my love out to all the family and all her friends who I'm sure who we've all cherished our time with her and the like. And I was trying to think of what to say, where to start first. Hanukkah was always a special time for me because of Aunt Adele. And somehow I think I always thought that her smile was even brighter than the candles. And she was just a joy. Some of my fondest memories were going to the house in up in where was the first house? I can't think of where it was. Mount Vernon, visiting the house in Mount Vernon, and how I loved going up there because there were so many books and there was so much art. And I think that's one of the special places that I found my love of books and art was through going to that house and just, I would come in and they had a beautiful Bible from Israel. And I used to love to sit down and had no idea really what I was reading, but it was just the spirit that I was able to get from that. And it was also another important thing, I'm just all over the place here, was the love that I saw and experienced with it between Aunt Adele and my Uncle Stuart. Later, her love for Murray. And I think she's one of the women in my life who taught me that it was wonderful to express yourself and to share your love with other people. And I mean, when I was 14, I spent 2 glorious weeks. I was a babysitter, so I was watching all 3 of the children. And we spent a week up in Connecticut, then another week traveling to Lake Winnipesaukee. And one of the most magical moments was walking out of my room and seeing Adele and Stuart on this balcony. And just the way they walked towards each other and embraced was the most beautiful expression of love that I think I had ever seen up until that point. So her family, her children, she's just brought so much joy to us, and I will miss her. I loved being able to go to her 90th birthday and seeing all these extraordinary women who had been friends with her since college, and also dancing with her in Chicago when we went to the inauguration of my cousin Andrew as the head of the AMA. So I will leave it at that. She will be missed, but she will be well remembered. I have pictures of her everywhere. One of my favorites is when we were up in Chicago, and she danced amazingly, both she and all of the children. Anyway, thank you so much. Love to all.
Thank you so much. We have more family members who want to share. I would like to go to Susan Gurman now. Susan, if you would unmute, and I think it's your dad, Jules, who would like to speak after you. So Susan, if you can unmute, are you there with us?
Yeah, we're here. After I speak, Julian, my youngest child, would like to speak. So each of you have captured Nana, Adele, Adina so beautifully. I came into the family late, very late. And I came with baby in my stomach, and that was Lily. And the past couple of days, I've been reflecting on all of the wonderful things Adele taught me, so many, and that we as a family associate with her. And I just wanted to bring some of those up because it isn't just Torah. You know, Nana was of the generation that didn't have bat mitzvah, and she took a class. I just couldn't believe it. She took a class with other adults and became an adult b'nai mitzvah. I mean, it was just, and we were so proud of her, and she was so proud and happy. So I just wanted to bring up a few things that I associate with her. Brisket. So I grew up in New Jersey, and sauce Arturo was this little tiny can. Nancy, I remember you telling me just 1 can of sauce Arturo and not more ever. And that was the way to make a brisket, a great brisket. And sad to say that even recently, I've looked everywhere and the sauce Arturo company is out of business. So the briskets have never tasted as good. But many other things of Nana was, and I want to say this about, she kept friends and she kept things, and she had friends I mean, they were just Mount Vernon, not only Mount Vernon, but she kept the Gurman family, even becoming a widow and enveloping the Koneckys to their Pesach Seder, to their Sukkot meals. But she kept the Gurmans close as well. Nothing changed in that. And that, to me, that was beautiful because she had such an extended family in that regard. And so one of the other things, this is random, I'm sorry, is her baking. She was the most amazing baker. And I mean, her cakes were perfect. And Denny, I know you have that. It's obviously a genetic thing because I clearly don't have that. But Lily has picked up the mantle. And Julian, who will speak next, is also a great baker. So a few other things that I also associate with Nan besides the books, and she gave us some books since Julian was the last baby for sure. She gave us some books that she had loved. Rob and I were going through this the other day, The Red Carpet, The Guy with All the Hats. Yes, The Man with All the Hats. And so one of the things that I want to share was when she and Murray were moving out of Irvington and permanently moving to Florida, she asked Rob and I to come up, and she had some things left over. And I go in the garage and there is this ancient looking freezer. I mean, you could have put a body in it. It was one of those horizontal, yes, we actually watched another show recently where there was a body in it. And she said, this is, I'm going to get rid of the freezer. And I said, gosh, it looks so old. Well, it turns out it was her mother's freezer from Ridgefield, Connecticut. And it was over 50 years old. And it still worked. Unfortunately, we did not have a place for it. In later life, when they did move to the Barclay in Otherby, Nana and I had a special trip, and that was to go to, Cons of Orchard Street, which is in Boca, if I'm not mistaken, Carolyn, someone. We would go there and she would try on I'm sorry, it's all the bees, bathing suits or a bathrobe. And when Lily would come together, we'd both take her there and then we'd go out for pizza next door. But one of the other things I want to say that one of the people I met early on were the Elsters. I know her family members are going to remember this. And it turns out that Sam Elster was Stuart's best friend, and they'd gone to medical school together. And then Sam became, I think, the dean of the medical school at Sinai. And she had this enormous coterie of friends and people who just loved her so much. It's an extraordinary thing. And one more thing I just wanted to say, and then Julian will speak, is that Shabbos. So I grew up conservative. Most of my family is Orthodox. I met Adele, and she was the first person who really taught me what it means to be an active Reform Jewish member in this country. Not only did she go to Israel in 1962, but Brandeis University, she did two things that are extraordinarily beautiful. She helped when Brandeis was being created. I think she gave money to the library. I don't remember exactly. But she also, after Stuart died, she created an annual, and it's not the money, it was that she commemorated Stuart, her late husband's memory. Every year, a medical student got an award with a little money, and Nana got a letter. And to me, she just really knew how to take the world with her as she went through it. It wasn't just friends, it was people. And she carried them beautifully along. And so one more, just the Shabbos. So I learned the song about Shabbos when we light the candles. Robert, my husband, is here. Rob, what is this song? There's a song she sang it was after, when you cut the challah. Oh, the song, yes. So Nana, what?
The prayer.
It's a prayer, but it was the song. To God for bread,
Our voices sing in song together. As prayer is humbly said.
And then she would say the prayer. So those are things that I remember. Julian would like to speak.
So this past semester, I took a course in aesthetics, which is the study of art, more importantly, the philosophical side of it. And on my final, I was asked a question from the philosopher Hume. Was he correct that there is a logic of taste? And originally I answered that he wasn't completely correct, but going through Nana's artworks that my dad had me catalog and hearing all the stories about her, I was wrong. There is a objective of taste, and she had it. She knew exactly what the goodness in everyone was. She was able to pinpoint it in seconds and start a conversation and become friends with you, best friends with you, within a minute. It was incredible. And not only did she collect the art, but she, as everyone said, she collected people, and that's what she did. She was an aesthetician, I think is the term. Try saying that 5 times fast. But yeah, she just, thinking about her and all the stories made me rethink my answer, because she 100% had that logic of taste. It was incredible.
Thank you, Julie.
Well, thank you so much. Amazing. I love the Shabbat stories. Those are the things that really bring people together and really highlight her love of Judaism, not just outside, not just in the synagogue, not just in Israel, but in her home, and how warm and close and important that is. We have a few more people who would like to speak. We're going to ask Donald Berger at this time to unmute and to share with us at this time.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Everybody hear me? Okay. So Robert asked me if I had any good Adele stories. I don't know if my stories would constitute good Adele stories, because many of them have to do with my getting into trouble. Like breaking the crystal vase on top of the piano after having been told not to throw a football in the house. I do not have lots of memories, because I probably spent, I said I do have lots of memories because I probably spent more time at Robert's house than I did at my own. Perhaps that's why Adele once said to me, so Don, what are you having for dinner tonight at home? I can't remember what I had for dinner last night, but I remember the Danbury Fair, the US Open at Forest Hills with Laver, Anastasi, Rosewall, Chuck Passarell, the maroon Chevy Impala convertible, great times by the pool. Adele and Murray were the host and hostess with the mostest. Adele was a rock. She had to work, be both parents to 3 kids with incredibly different personalities and temperaments. Even though Andy, Denny, and Robert didn't get to experience the love and support of 2 parents, Adele managed to instill a sense of self-confidence in all 3 of them. Robert, Denny, and Andy have learned to gracefully navigate the vicissitudes of life because of the self-confidence and optimism and optimistic outlook she managed to instill in them, for the most part through example. I've come to the conclusion that kids may listen to nothing that you say, but they scrutinize and often integrate what we do. Adele always led by example. Her actions were influenced by her parents, Sylvia and Sam, Judaism, art, music, opera, and reading, After all, she was a librarian. I suppose I could go on, but I won't. Adele left a big footprint on this planet. You only have to look at her kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids to begin to experience it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have two more people. We have two more people that I know want to speak before Andy speaks. And if you would like to add some reflections as well, please just let us know in the chat box so that we can call on you. I'm going to ask Jeff Silberman, if you would join us now, and then Helen Kaufman will join us. Jeff?
Hi, thank you. I was one of the fortunate people to be part of Adele's collection. I grew up with Robert, and we've known each other since we were 8 years old. And what always amazed me is that we were so lucky, because I think Adele was part of a generation and probably one of the leaders of a generation who raised us all. I mean, we were kids, we all had our own parents, and we all had our own homes. But when we were with her, we had a second mother. And I remember every time I went over to play with Robert, the door would open and I'd be met with the biggest grin, the warmest smile, the most incredible embrace that anybody could ever ask for. And there was always a twinkle in her eye. And I didn't realize it then, but I think maybe a little bit of mischief. But there was always something special about coming over there. And, you know, I too definitely remember the rides in the convertible. That was a treat. And getting picked up and carpooled, I guess all of our mothers would take turns, but getting carpooled around there. And then as soon as Robert was old enough, remember he and Don and I would go out and play ball, and Robert would drive that big convertible. I remember the tennis whites and her athleticism, and her, you know, a number of people have talked about her elegance, and I hadn't recollected that. But yeah, literally the way that she moved in the world had a grace and elegance and femininity about it that was beautiful. And of course, her love for Judaism. I mean, it was all, it laced her, it infused her life. And I grew up in an observant home as well. And so I think that added a little extra touch to the connection that I felt. Thanks.
We're going to ask Helen Kaufman to join us now.
Hi, it is just wonderful to hear these amazing stories. I feel like I know all of you more than I haven't met you all that often, but Adele spoke of you so often that I feel like I know you very well. We met Adele and Murray at a Hanukkah party in Mount Vernon. And very quickly, I was one of the very, very fortunate people to be collected by Adele. And she became the person in my life, like the favorite aunt that I never had. I didn't grow up in an observant household, so to see the way that she practiced and studied was just, you know, it was very special, very, very special to have her in my life, in our lives. And not only that, but it was the four of us, you know, she was with Murray at that time. It was obviously not so hard to be a friend of Adele's because Adele was so friendly with everyone. And that was just a wonderful happening. But the fact that George and Murray and Adele and I all got along so incredibly well. It's to find one person in your life who's a friend is one thing, but when two couples can all share that kind of experience, it's just a gift. George and Murray spent many evenings seeing who had more new jokes and going, back and forth. We have incredibly fond memories of those times. I think we were fortunate not only to know Adele and Murray in the years that we were involved at the Free Synagogue, but then they moved to Irvington. They moved across the street from where we lived. And not so long after that, we actually got a condominium in the same place where they lived. So there was a closeness of having Adele as a next door neighbor that in a way was very special because it didn't wait for an occasion or an invitation. We spent time together. And one of my fondest memories is at a time that wasn't so great. Adele had had some surgery. She had had some foot surgery. And it was one of the very few times that she wasn't feeling so hot and was feeling very limited. You know how much she loved tennis and visiting and doing things. And she was feeling kind of depressed. And I went over one day and we got in the car and we went for a hot fudge sundae. And that just became something that we talked about every time we would meet, thereafter. We would be remembering that that hot fudge sundae. And I don't think we ever got to have another one, but we did in spirit, if not in not being able to do it in person. So from Mount Vernon to Irvington, and then later, whenever we would go to Florida, East Coast or West Coast, we would visit Adele and Murray at the Barclay and at the Carlisle. And she's just been a really, really important part in our lives. And we feel just grateful to be able to be sharing this time with all of you who love her so much. And we join you in that.
Helen, thank you so much. We are going to call next on Susie Holzer, who's a member of Temple Beth Israel. Her family goes back generations in our congregation. And Susie, we're going to ask you to unmute and share.
I am one of the more recent people who has met Adele, and I guess it's not even that recent, but when Nancy and Andy moved to Altoona and Hollidaysburg, we became very close friends. So when Adele and Murray would come, we would come to Andy and Nancy's house to visit, and she always appeared to me to be like the grand dame, and she always dressed impeccably, coiffed impeccably, and very impressive. So mostly we saw each other at the life cycle events of the Gurmans, the bat mitzvahs, confirmation, Karen's wedding, the most recent, and of course, Andy's inauguration in Chicago. That was awesome. She was so proud of her son, the doctor, and she was even prouder that this year, because of COVID, he became the baker and made a babka that he mailed to her in Florida. So, and I'm sure that you are all going to miss her incredibly. And I just want to send my love to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie. I want to call on Rabbi Yaron, who's joining us, Adele's rabbi here. And thank you. It's such a joy to have everyone who was in all of these various circles of Adele's life joining us. Rabbi Yaron.
So thank you everyone for being here. I think I want to reflect what Helen said. I do not know a lot of you, but I've heard so much about so many of you. And so it really feels like we're sitting here among family. And two short things. When I think of Adele, when I used to call her and then ask her how she's doing, she always used to say, there's nothing to complain about. And I said to her, Adele, that's not true. There's plenty to complain about. And I happen, down here with different hospitalizations and pains and difficulties. And and all that, and missing the family in Israel, and not being able to always be there. And I said to her, you choose not to complain. And that's exactly what she was. She chose not to complain. She always had that amazing smile that so many of you described so beautifully on her face. And she was full of gratitude. I just was, as people were sitting here, I just scrolled down and looked at emails that I received from her. And when we started streaming services, here, let me just pull that email up. She sent me this such a beautiful email. Dear Rabbi Aaron, I watched our Friday night services on my computer last night, and I was just thrilled. I live a distance from the temple. It's difficult for me to get there. Would you please forward my thanks to the person or persons who did this generous mitzvah? She's referring to the person who gave us the gift to be able to stream. So she knew how to express gratitude, and she was constantly not just proud and full of gratitude. And maybe the most amazing day I remember with her is, and I don't exactly remember how it happened, but when she decided to adopt the name Adina. So in our Torah study that was mentioned a few times here by different people, and when we walk around and everybody reminds them, we remind ourselves of our names and say something. I remember the day she said, and today I want you to know, no longer call me Adele, I am Adina. And it was just with that joy, she was so proud of that move to become Adina. And anyways, it's still hard to believe that she is gone, but she's not really gone. She's one of those people that you meet, and all you need to do is meet once in your life, and they leave an impact on you. So I just want to send my love and my condolences to the entire family, and I hope that when you are down in Florida, you will keep making Temple Judea a place that you will come and visit, and that together we can enjoy that joy that she enjoyed so much, and sending you love from Israel. So thank you so much. Bye.
Rabbi Yaron, thank you so much. I know it's very late there. It's just a joy to hear all of these stories. We have a friend, Frank Graziano, who would like to share some memories. Frank, if you would unmute and share with us.
Hi, all. Hi, Gurman. My love to everyone. So I came into the family when I was 14. I met Robert when I was in junior high school, and he instantly invited me over the house, and Adele graciously and warmly invited me into her home. And to be honest, that's going to be, we'll all have been friends for 50 years next year, which is kind of amazing to me. I heard about the baking, and a story came up in my mind. And she was baking, and we were probably about 15 years old and sitting in the backyard by the pool, and she brought out rucola. Now I'm Italian American, and that wasn't anything that I've ever had, but I remember eating it and saying, wow, this is so delicious, so delicious. And for years I talk about it, and so many years later she is baking it again, and she gave me some, and I ate it, and I said, Adele, what is with this rucola? It seems to be raw. And she said, oh, Frank, when you kids were young, I always gave you the burnt ones. And so for years, that's how I thought rucola was supposed to be made. And so that's like a funny story. Another story was she had put a sukkah in her backyard, and I was in the pool. It was in the bathhouse, and she was really excited about that and brought me right in and sat me in there and told me the whole story. And another thing, when I went to dental school at Columbia later in life, Robert also and Donald and our friend Dick taught me the prayers for the wine and the prayers for the bread. So when I went to dental school at Columbia years later, I had a lot of Orthodox friends, and they were always amazed at how many things I knew about Judaism and the holidays and the whole bit, and I was able to really appreciate that. And I have nothing but love. And when I think of Adele in my mind, all I see is a big smile coming at me. And every time I saw her, she had a big smile coming at me and always asked me how I was doing and what I was doing and what my plans were, and tried to give me any advice that she could. So I've been part of this family for a long time, and I'm so happy, and I love you all, and I am sad to see her go. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. we had the delight of having Adele with us recently on Zoom. We've been on Zoom since March. And in the summer, she started joining when she's age 93, very adept at Zoom, started coming to our Torah study classes and our Friday night Shabbat services. And I don't know whether Andy got more of a kick out of the fact that her mom was joining us, that his mom was joining us for services, or if Adele got more of a kick out of the fact that she could be with her son's congregation for Shabbat and for study. Whatever the case, Andy has a special memory and a special story that he would like to share with us before we go to our concluding blessings. Andy?
Thank you. Just a couple of thoughts, and then my daughter Amy asked me to share this story with you. I would like to thank everybody who was here, and particularly people who spoke. You have allowed us to see our mother through different eyes. And Frank, that Ruggles story is hysterical. And it is part of what I talked about at the beginning, the world as she saw it. Because the world as she saw it, kids didn't get the good stuff. That was for the grownups. So kids were there to fob off the burnt ones. But wonderful story. So thank you for allowing us to see our mother through your eyes. The story that I want to share with you also is part of what I talked about earlier about how she saw the world as she wanted it, or as she thought it should be, rather than the way it was. And sometimes that led to utter bewilderment at what happened. So I came home. I did. I said that Amy asked me to tell the story. I came home from college once, and you need to know that our kitchen in Mount Vernon had a brick floor. So Mom asked me to come into the kitchen, and she says, "Look at this. This is really great." And she takes a glass bowl and she tosses it on the floor, and it breaks into a bazillion pieces. And I looked at her, I said, "Mom, that's great. Can I do one?" And the backstory to this is that somebody had sold her electric meter covers to be used as indestructible bowls. And in the carpeted showroom of whatever store it was that she was in, he tossed one on the carpeted floor and it rattled around and whatever. But on her brick floor, it must have caught the corner or whatever, and it just boom. And the look on her face of utter, total bewilderment. Was it angry? Was it just like, oh my God, what happened? So that's, I'm not sure it's as good as the burnt rugelach, but it was certainly one of the good stories. Again, thank you all. You were here from all over the world, all over the states, West Coast, East Coast, Virginia, Tennessee, Israel. It's just a delight to share this with you. And I thank you so much for being here. Love you all. Thank you.
Thank you. We come to our concluding prayers. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey. From childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again. From health to sickness and back we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death is a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Adele's family requested this particular reading in her memory. And so after each line, Wherever you are, please join together in the phrase, "We remember her." In the rising of the sun and its going down, we remember her. In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of the winter, we remember her. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember her. In the blueness of the sky and the warmth of the sun, we remember her. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember her. In the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember her. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember her. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember her. When we have joys we yearn to share, we remember her. So long as we live, she too shall live, for she is now a part of us as we remember her. Those who wish to at this time may stand in place for the final two readings of the service. El Maleh Rachamim asks God's compassion and care for Adele. And the mourner's Kaddish is not a prayer, and it actually doesn't mention death. It's a statement of our faith in God and also of our faith that our memories keep our loved ones alive for us in a way that transcends death itself. En Maleh Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, Benishmat Adina Bat Shmuel V'Sara, Shechalcha Le'olama, Ba'al HaRachamim, Yitzror B'Yitzror HaChayim Et Nishmata, Adonai Hu Nachalata, V'Tanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkava, V'Nomar Amen. God of abundant mercy, God most high, may the soul of our loved one who has gone into eternity find the gift of perfect peace in your embrace, together with the holy and pure whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold Adele close to you forever, so that her soul may be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May she find a home with you, and may she rest in peace, as together we say, Amen. I want to thank our temple president, Michael Holzer, for all of his assistance with the technology, and ask him if you would bring up on the screen the words of the mourner's Kaddish with which we conclude our prayers. And please don't leave too soon. After the mourner's Kaddish, I want to put everybody on the screen in a gallery view so that the family can see who's been sharing the joy of our presence and the wonderful stories today. The mourner's Kaddish. Yitgadal ve'yitkadash shemei rabah, be'alma divrach yeruteh v'yamlech malchuteh, b'chayechon uvyomechon, uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv imru. Amen. Yehe shemei rabah mevarach le'olam ulalmei almaya, Yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalal shemei dekudisha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tush b'chata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehe shalom rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru. Amen. May the one who makes peace to reign in the high heavens let peace and comfort and healing come upon all of those who are mourning and remembering in this sacred space. And let us say together, Amen. If you've been standing, please be seated. On behalf of the family, thanks to all of you. I want the family to see all of you. So, and there's more than this, but if anybody wants to take a screenshot, you can see the faces of everybody's here. And I have more faces and names to share in just a moment, but I wanted the family to see everybody who is here. But wait, there's more. Some people are not on screen, but you'll be able to see the names of those who have been attending. And you can give a wave to the family. So thank you all for being here. And please take care of yourselves and one another as we say either good afternoon or good night.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before everybody leaves, there's one more person that I want to call out. Stephanie is here. Stephanie was Mom's aide and companion for quite some time, and there she is on my screen. Stephanie was like a daughter, a friend, a granddaughter, whatever. She took tremendous devotion to Mom, particularly since January when we couldn't get there. So Stephanie, in front of all of these people, I want to publicly acknowledge and thank you.
Stephanie.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gurman. Thank you very much, Dr. Gurman. Appreciate that very much. And then,
Okay,
you know,
everybody.
I did love her very
Thank you
much.
again
She
for
was great.
coming. This has been wonderful.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Oh, Shani, that's so cute. Okay, Julie took us off.
Yeah, I took this one.
He took us off.